Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for checking into the Sanders Report. Happy 2025. It's been about a month or so since I've been able to record anything, and life happens. It gets in the way. You had the holidays, Christmas break. Here in Louisville, we had an extended Christmas break because we had a large snowstorm. Roads were terrible. Kids were out of school for an extra week, so that was great. I got to go sledding, having fun with my son, but it's also nice to be able to get back into the routine. And when the kids aren't in school, it's hard to carry on with the normal routine. Then had a few illnesses in the family and stuff like that, and just haven't had a chance to get on the mic. But there's a lot of stuff that's happened. Syria collapsed. Bashar al-Assad is no longer in power. We got a Al Qaeda representative now, or reformed Al Qaeda. This guy named Al Jalani. He's running Syria now, and apparently he's a good guy now. The West supports him, so that's good. It's always good to get radical Islamists in control of states, so that way we can turn around and try to fight them here in a few years. And on that same note, because of the collapse of Syria, Israel has been able to expand their presence and is now occupying a portion of Syria until Israel has determined that their safety is secured. So it obviously has nothing to do with the Oded Yenin plan, which was mapped out in the 80s. Oded Yenin was a advisor to Ariel Sharon, who's a former prime minister of Israel. But Oded Yenin had this document that he wrote in some publication, but the title of it was A Strategy for Israel in the 1980s. And he talked about expanding Israel's borders back to the borders outlined in the Bible, kind of like what's happened. But of course, if you point that out, that's a conspiracy. So then you've got these California wildfires going crazy, which is a direct result of poor management of land and resources by the government. They don't want to admit that, but might help if you cleared out some of that dead brush and debris, especially when you live in a region, an area that's known for the wildfires. And that's kind of what happens. And then you divert all of your water away so you can protect a smelt fish, which I'm all about protecting the environment. But if it's to benefit humans or to benefit an animal or a fish, we're going to do whatever we need to do to benefit humans, okay? Because they need the water. That's where the water should go. We're not worried about the smelt fish. And yes, I know then you get into the whole argument about, well, there's a chain reaction, and if the smelt fish, then you can mess up the. Well, we'll address that when we get to it. We'll address that when we get to it. We're not going to worry about the smelt fish, okay? People need water. That's where it needs to go. Then you also had the strange twin terrorist attacks on New Year's Eve. You had the guy down in New Orleans, and then you had the Green Beret blow up the cyber truck right in front of Trump Tower. So that was really bizarre, especially considering both of them were from Fort Bragg. And, again, we're just speculating here, but they're both from the same military base. Are we looking at some type of potential MK Ultra stuff going on? Maybe some brainwashing. I don't know. But what I really want to get into today is Trump expanding the United States to try to take over Canada and Mexico and potentially Greenland and the Panama Canal and anywhere else, I guess, because that's what it's looking like. And if you ask me, it looks a lot like the repackaging of the North American Union. Now, if people aren't familiar with the North American Union, it was this project that was occurring about 20 years ago, really got going under Bush Jr. And Bush Jr. was doing this thing. It was called the Security and Prosperity Partnership for an American uh, an American community, and basically what it was a trade deal, kind of like NAFTA, but it was going to further integrate the United States with Canada and Mexico. And the thought of that, to me, is terrifying. It's very much like a European Union style governance, and the United States would lose a lot of its sovereignty. And that's something that like I didn't even know about when I used to defend George W. Bush because I didn't even pay attention. I don't think a lot of people have ever even heard of that. There was a whole speculation about the Amero that was going to be the currency, kind of like the European Union has the euro. People said we were going to have an Amero, but why all of a sudden now has Trump gone to building a wall to, well, let's just take them over? And see, it's a different pitch. It's a different sales pitch. It's not being sold to the people as, oh, we're going to integrate with these other countries. Because, if you take your typical patriotic, conservative American and say we're going to integrate and merge with Mexico and Canada, they would outright be against that. They would say, no, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to be part of some North American Union. But when it's sold to them as we're going to take them over and we're going to get their resources, well, people are on board with that. People aren't even objecting to that. Not like you would expect them to. Even so here I found this Matt Gaetz, who was Trump's pick for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz on Tucker Carlson a few years back, and this is how they attacked the Biden administration, talking about the same thing, and this has a really good part too, where Mexico's president kind of talks about it and lays it out. But let's listen to this.
So the European Union has not really worked out well for Europe. We'll know the details this winter when people are freezing. So naturally, the Biden administration wants to create something very much like that in North America, an EU-style government. The Mexican president, AMLO, says that Tony Blinken, our Secretary of State, just proposed that idea. Watch this.
I think that Mr. Blinken spoke about consolidating the region of North America. Also in favor of a unity of the entire American continent, like the way the first European community emerged and converted into the European Union. That's what we want.
Oh, so we're going to merge with Mexico in the middle of the most brutal drug war in its history. Mexico is effectively run by the cartels at this point, but we're going to merge with the cartels. Okay. No one noticed this, really. Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz noticed it. He sent a letter today to Tony Blinken asking, what is this? He joins us tonight to tell us what he's heard back. Congressman, thanks so much for noticing this and for asking what it means. What does it mean, and did you get an answer?
It means that the globalist left wants a homogenized North America because they don't think that much of the United States of America in the first place. I haven't gotten an answer, but it begs the question, why are we so friendly with Mexico anyway? They've cooked up more death in the Mexican mountains than any crazy mad scientist in Wuhan would have ever thought of. And it's hard to tell where the cartels end and the government of Mexico begins. They had a former president take a $100 million bribe from Sinaloa. They had a former defense chief function as the muscle for the cartel, one of their state-level attorneys general sentenced to 20 years in the United States of America. But while they're sleepwalking to a war with Russia, they are actually surrendering American sovereignty to Mexico, and Canada's not much better. I don't want my constituents having to live under the socialist tyrannical lockdowns enacted by Justin Trudeau Castro while their nephew's being poisoned by Mexican fentanyl, but that apparently is the globalist order that the Biden administration supports here as they give away our money and our chance of a brighter future overseas.
Of course. I mean, the Mexican cartels have killed multiples, many, many more Americans than Al-Qaeda ever did. And we fought multiple wars over that.
So you see, there's Matt Gaetz, and he's talking about American sovereignty, protecting American sovereignty, and that's a great point. However, all of that seems to be overlooked when you sell it as, well, we're going to take them over. And that's exactly what Trump's doing. And this is what I've always said. Trump is a globalist in patriots clothing. I don't trust him at all. I did vote for him. I voted for him, but I'm not a Trump supporter. I liked Trump more than Biden, and I knew that the Libertarian candidate didn't have a chance of winning, so I voted for Trump. But I'm also not going to, not hold Trump accountable. Like a lot of, apparently everybody thinks everything's fixed. Kind of like the first administration. Trump got in, and hey, everything's better. It wasn't better. The deficits were skyrocketing, and Trump did the new NAFTA deal. It's called the United States of America, Mexico, and Canada. It's called the AMAC deal, and all it was a renegotiation of NAFTA, and kind of implemented a lot of the language that came from the Trans-Pacific Partnership that got scrapped under Obama. See, that's what I'm always worried. See, it's the Republicans that will be your line of defense against globalist stuff like merging and integrating with some type of global order. Kind of like gun control. Republicans will be the one to resist gun control. But then you point out to people, hey, Trump did more gun control than Biden did. Trump banned bump stocks, right? If Biden had tried to ban bump stocks, there would have been a lot more pushback. But a Republican did it, so the Republicans were totally on board with it. But so at the beginning there, if you caught on, Mexico's president was talking about how the European Union started from trade deals. And that's exactly right. Like, see, a lot of people think the European Union wasn't created until 1992. Now, that's when, I forgot the name of the treaty. They signed the official treaty establishing the European Union in 1992. But the foundation for the European Union was being built immediately after World War II. Right after the United States implemented the Marshall Plan so we could, send aid to the European countries, they started creating all these other economic organizations, and they started doing trade deals in Europe. And then they did the Treaty of Rome in 1957. And it was all these small trade deals over the years that brought about the foundation to build and create the European Union. And that's what we've done. We had NAFTA. They started trying to push the FTAA, which was the Free Trade Areas of America, and they basically wanted to expand NAFTA all the way throughout South America. And that's when we started really having a lot of problems with Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, because Hugo Chavez, I don't like the guy, but he was one of their opponents because he saw these deals as a threat to the Venezuelan people and to his government, and so he was pushing back. And that's typically the way it works. You'll get these socialist dictator types, and they don't want to give up their little power, and the wealthy globalist that want to get their resources, they start launching attacks against them. And that's what we do with economic sanctions and everything else. See, I'm a proponent of free trade, but I believe in real free trade. You don't need all of these government trade deals and government organizations for people to freely trade and conduct commerce with one another. That's a problem. Free trade is just that, free trade. When you have a group that controls it, that's centralized. And that's the biggest problem with creating some type of North American community is now power is becoming more centralized. We need more decentralized power. We need people to operate on local levels. That's how things become more efficient. It's when they're so big, it becomes inefficient, and then you need authoritarian government to try to force it to work. That's what always happens. These countries that try to be communist, they try to be socialist. If they try to do these things, they see that to manage that on a large scale and allow freedom to happen, it's impossible. So they become extremely authoritarian. And like I said, this is a repackaging of the North American community stuff that Bush was trying to sell us. And so this is an old clip. I remember when I saw this, it might have been in one of the Alex Jones films or something that I first saw this, but I remember thinking, I can't believe I've never heard of this. And Lou Dobbs did a really good job. Because he even covered it into Obama, because the Security and Prosperity Partnership talks continued on into the Obama administration, but finally there was just not enough support, and they kind of backed away. And then now they're pushing forward again through this the AMAC deal and everything else. And you see it with, like I said, what Trump's doing with Canada, Greenland, Mexico, and all that. But here's the Lou Dobbs clip where he kind of talks about it.
The Bush administration's open borders policy and its decision to ignore the enforcement of this country's immigration laws is part of a broader agenda. President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it, and he took the step without approval from either the U.S. Congress or the people of the United States. Bill Tucker reports.
The Security and Prosperity Partnership of North America sounds benign, hardly like a policy that critics call NAFTA on steroids. It's a deal that few have even heard of.
It's being done again by very few people at the very top on behalf of the investment class, but the working class of people. Political officials across our country, from communities, from cities and so forth, they don't know anything about this.
Yet it was agreed to by Mexico's President Fox, Canada's Prime Minister Martin, and President Bush in 2005. Administration officials counter their critics by saying everything about SPP is on the White House website. And they say the partnership is not a treaty, but more of an outline of priorities between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Still, some wonder why there haven't been public discussions about the goals being pursued.
This SPP includes, for instance, a committee that is sitting down to harmonize our meat inspection and food safety. So how far away from a trade agreement can your dining room table and what you feed your kids be?
Other parts of the agreement mention border security as an issue, which include all of North America. In fact, the name of the agreement is not Security and Prosperity of the United States, but of North America.
When we elect officials, we expect them to act on our behalf. When we get involved in cooperative frameworks with other countries for joint regulation of fisheries or rail transportation or the skies, we're basically sharing our sovereignty with that government and outsourcing some of what we give our elected officials.
As disturbing as some find SPP, there is legislation in the House introduced by Florida's Katherine Harris that closely resembles the goals of the partnership. Included in that bill is a section which calls for the securing of Mexico's southern border by the United States and Canada. Lou, that's not the border with the United States, that's the border they share with Belize and Guatemala.
The idea that the White House would respond that this is on their website, this involves intricate workings amongst the Commerce Department of this country and Canada and Mexico's, of course, a regional prosperity and security program. This is absolute ignorance. And the fact that we reported this, we should point out, when it was signed. But as we watch this thing progress, these working groups are continuing, they're intensifying. What in the world are these people thinking about?
Well, they say, look, these are a declaration and an outline of our priorities. And when I called them today, Lou, they said I was the first phone call they had received literally since the deal was first signed. So people are not paying attention, and they're letting them, in fact, get away with this.
You know, I was asked the other day about whether or not I really thought the American people had the stomach to stand up and stop this nonsense, this direction from a group of elites in absolute contravention of our law, of our Constitution, every national value. And I hope, I pray that I'm right when I said yes, but this is beyond belief. Bill Tucker, thank you very much.
Imagine that, getting some good news on CNN. That was, I mean, And that's exactly what it is. It's the elites. It's the elites of every country. It's not just the elites of America and Europe. It's the elites everywhere. And they're using the government structures of all these countries to kind of position themselves for their best interest, and I don't necessarily know that it's like one centralized global entity, although I think it is working towards that. But it's the wealthy people of China, it's the wealthy people in Russia, the wealthy people in Israel, and Europe and America and South America, like just all over the world. And they're just kind of playing this game, and they have to think of how they can sell it to us so that way we accept it and think that it's good for us. There's some quote I saw the other day. It's like the best way to keep somebody from trying to escape prison is not letting them realize that they're in prison. You know what I mean? So it's like if we think everything's good and we think everything's in our best interest, we're not going to fight against it. And this all stems from there was a Council on Foreign Relations report came out in 2005, right around the same time as this security and prosperity partnership deal with Trump. And they talked about in their paper, they said, this is direct quote from page 3 of the article. It says, its boundaries will be defined by a common external tariff. Think of that tariff. That's what Trump's in love with, is tariffs, right? So its boundaries will be defined by a common external tariff and an outer security perimeter within which the movement of people, products, and capital will be legal, orderly, and safe. Its goal will be to guarantee a free, secure, just, and prosperous North America. Now, that sounds great. Oh, a free and prosperous North America. Who doesn't want that? Well, I want that for America, and I want that for everybody else, but I also want American sovereignty. I want the U.S. Constitution. The Constitution, what enshrines and protects our God-given rights for freedom of speech, the freedom to protect ourselves, the freedom to fair courts. And we're just going to give this up. When you give in to these globalist trade organizations and policies, it creates unaccountable bureaucracy. You know what I mean? Like, because these are going to be representatives that aren't from the United States that are making decisions. And if you look at the AMAC, that trade deal that Trump, basically NAFTA 2.0, there's broad powers given to a free trade commission, and that allows them to amend certain parts of that agreement. And that's with no congressional oversight. So it's basically a government that supersedes the United States government that can make these deals. Kind of like the World Health Organization. They want to do these, health treaties that allows them to come in and implement their policies in the case of another pandemic or something like that. We have to reject that. All of the power to create laws for the United States lies within Congress. That's the reason why I have a problem with a lot of the stuff that Trump wants to do, because he wants to do it through executive action. It's not the way the country is supposed to work. It's just the more we integrate, the more centralized we become, the more easier it will become for an authoritarian leader or an authoritarian world government to basically come in and control everything. And that's why we have to protect our sovereignty. When this country first started, all of the states were kind of like their own little countries. Like citizens of Kentucky, we were citizens of Kentucky before we were citizens of America, and that's how they saw it. They'd say, "Well, I'm from Kentucky." They weren't. I'm not from America. I'm from Kentucky. Now, Kentucky was in America, and all of these states got together and made agreements, to basically give up a little bit of their power in the best interest of all the other states, and that's how we got to where we are now. And it's just little by little, it's been chipped away and chipped away. And now there's hardly any states' rights at all. And that's eventually what is going to happen to our country. You know, little bit by little bit, we're giving up our power to these global bodies, the World Trade Organization and the World Bank, the IMF. All these groups are going to be the ones that end up getting to dictate the policy and how we have to conduct ourselves and our economy and our lives. And so it's important for people to know about this stuff. I mean, this was from the North America's Super Corridor Coalition, and this was a group that was in favor of the Security and Prosperity Partnership, but this was called the Trans-Texas Corridor. And Rick Perry, who is the former governor of Texas, he was actually really big on trying to push this through. And basically it was this huge highway that was going to run through Mexico up into Kansas City. That was going to be like the central hub for America, was Kansas City, and they were going to have all these rail systems coming in and out. But this was going to be the main highway that kind of ran everything from Mexico through the United States and then up into Canada. And it got shut down. There was a lot of people in Texas that got involved and got this thing shut down. But, you know, we can't be complacent. We can't act like these people didn't just go away. They're just they got a better salesman. They got Donald Trump. He's like the best salesman in the world, right? The art of the deal. That's Trump. And that's who they got. And this he's got everybody fooled. Well, not everybody. I mean, of course, the Democrats hate him, but for much different reasons than what I dislike the guy for. But and here's Ron Paul. This was a quote from Ron Paul back around the time that the SPP was going on. And Ron Paul was one of the best representatives, I think, of my lifetime for sure. But he said, "The ultimate goal is not simply a superhighway, but an integrated North American Union, complete with a currency, a cross-national bureaucracy, and virtually borderless travel within the Union. Like the European Union, a North American Union would represent another step toward the abolition of national sovereignty altogether." And once again, he's right, and very, very prophetic, the things that Ron Paul has said. And, you know, he was always dismissed, and people made fun of him and thought he was an extremist, but you know, Ron Paul always spoke the truth, and I wish we could have more representatives like him. Truly a principled man of the Constitution. So, but that's it. I just wanted to try to make everybody aware of what's really going on, you know, and don't buy into it. You know, all my Trump friends, they're like, yeah, we're going to have the Gulf of America, and, you know, we're going to go to Canada and take all their resources. Like, it's not going to happen like that. It's not like we're all of a sudden going to get all these resources and then nationalize those resources so we can, you know, make money to provide services for the American people. And not that I'm big on nationalizing resources, but it's like, is that what you think we're going to do with those resources? No, it's just some other rich people are going to get control of them and figure out a way to make money off them, which, you know, I'm, again, not against people making money, but why is the government having anything to do with acquiring those resources for those people? Let the free market do what it needs to do. Let people do what they need to do, and leave government and business separate. All this public-private partnership, that's just nothing but fascism. So, you know, let's just pay attention to this Trump administration, hold them accountable, and let's not support any integration with Mexico or Canada. All right. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.